Satnam Aloha. So today I want to talk about the Neptune transits. And Neptune is the planet of spirituality, and it's the window into unity consciousness. And this is where we're all going for the Aquarian age. So Neptune takes about 164 years to move through the mandala, to move through all the signs of the zodiac. So it takes 2 to 3 years for Neptune to move through a gate. So we really feel these spiritual lessons at the collective level when we look at Neptune. So as I talked about before in many of my videos, our ancestral memories are releasing. And as these memories release from the collective unconscious, they manifest out in the external world. You know, and I was thinking about this time that we're in. I was having deja vu. It really reminds me of Germany from 1935 to 1945. This is when World War II was really amping up. So I checked it out. Hey, what was Neptune up to at this time? Well, of course, it's not going to be in the same gates, right? Because it takes 164 years to move through all these shadow patterns, right, in the mandala. Interestingly enough, though, when we were in these same patterns, it was the time of the Industrial Revolution, right? The age of the machine. And some are saying that we're moving into a fourth industrial revolution during this time. But that's another video. I just want to focus on these clusters of gates that we're in right now and how they connect with Germany. So you can see from 1938 to 1945, right? You've got these opposite gates. So you've got the 22. Let's look over here, 2020 to 2027. Neptune moved into the 22. That was the whole start of this whole thing in February 2020. Okay, and the opposite of that is 47. So that would have been around 1938. That's the programming partner. 2247, shadow of oppression, and then the shadow of dishonor. Okay, and then Neptune just moved into the 36, and the opposite of that is the 6. See on the other side, that's the shadow of conflict, shadow of turbulence, the 36. And then it will move into the 25, and then the opposite of that is the 46 over here, and then the 17. Right? And then the opposite of that is the 18. So that really piqued my interest in seeing that connection. So these programming partners, they work together, right? They work together. They're twins, right? So with Neptune in the 36 now, and interestingly enough, the day that Neptune moved into the 36 was the day that the bombing started in Israel and the Gaza Strip. Well, in 1938, right, Neptune was in the 6th gate of conflict and the gift of peace. It's clearly we didn't see that back then. So this process, right, from 1938 to 1945, this was the end of World War II with the Nuremberg trials, right? And what we were in the 18th gate then, and this is the shadow of judgment and the gift of integrity. So out of all of this came this gift of integrity, right? Out of this came the Nuremberg Code, which is a document of integrity. So if we look at the timeline for this present day, the programming partner of the 18 is the 17, and this starts in 2027. So this process we're in is going to come to some kind of conclusion in March 2027. It will be a start of a conclusion. And this is the gift of farsightedness, right? The gift of the whole. So this looks like we're going to be entering this intense process of growth in these next 6 years for humanity. And one of the shadow patterns of Germany was oppression, the 47, and that was the release of ancestral karma. And the opposite for us was the 22, which rules the Akashic records. And this kicked off this beginning of this global awakening in 2020. So it's really telling us to do something different than our ancestors did, right? That's the reason why these undigested memories are coming up, because they haven't come to their full conclusion, their full closure. So they need to be transmuted through us, right? Because we're the ones living on this planet right now. So even something different than what you did in your past life, something different than your ancestors, right? And I was reading the other day that Hitler didn't plan to exterminate millions and millions of Jews. That wasn't the plan at first. He thought, well, I'll just put them in the ghettos, right? I'll have them away from society. But the oppressed people kept complying and they kept obeying. And this angered this consciousness, right? I want to call it the consciousness of destruction, I want to call it, because we can't really say it's the Germans, it's another nationality, it's a consciousness, right? So this consciousness of destruction was angered by this. These people are not standing up, they're not pushing back, right? They're not complying, and this angered them even more. So the oppression got worse and worse, right, until it was murder, like genocide. So this is the same consciousness that's surfacing now in 2020 to 2027. I mean, it's always been there as an undercurrent, but it's really showing itself now, right? So we're leaving the Piscean age and entering into the Aquarian age. In the shadow of Pisces, which is the ruler of Pisces, the modern ruler of Pisces, is Neptune. And so when we think of Pisces, the shadow, we think of the martyr, right? The victim. It's escapism, it's delusion. And this archetype has to leave for the Aquarian age, right? The victim consciousness has to leave. So on the spiritual path, the archetype of the martyr is very strong in our spiritual DNA, right? Turn the other cheek, forgive. These are all really good messages. But the Aquarian age is a little bit different, right? It's about equality. It's about justice. It's about the collective leading the collective, right? It's not about master-disciple, right? Guru-chela, right? Spiritual teacher-student. It's about equality. So the language of the Aquarian age is action, right? It's love and action. So, for example, if someone is harming a child in front of you, someone that doesn't have a voice or doesn't have any power, right? Do you forgive it? I forgive this. I forgive this person harming the child. I'm going to turn the other cheek. I'm going to look away. Or do you let love move you into action, right? That's the Aquarian age. It's not enough to know the truth. Now you have to be the embodiment of truth. You have to be love in action. So it's about standing up and saying no, right? So we have to remember that we're God's eyes, we're God's hands and feet. And I really feel strongly what we need to do differently this time around is that the spiritual people are being called out to stand up and say no. Does that mean you go out on some freedom march or something? If you're called to, yes. But it's really about in your own life standing up for truth, right? Not to go into like, I'll just comply and I'll escape and I'm just going to hope that this will all go away without me having to participate. It's not going to work that way, right? So this consciousness of destruction, it's not a bad thing. It really isn't. It's because it's serving us to awaken. Every person on this planet is in the process of awakening right now. And so how much darker does it need to get until I stand up for this light inside me, until I answer that call inside me, right? How much darker does it have to get? Will I say yes when I mean yes? Will I say no when I mean no? So it's really important now to keep your eyes on the prize, which is unity consciousness. And anything that pulls you away from unity consciousness is taking you away from this new Aquarian consciousness. Neptune rules propaganda, right? And propaganda serves to shape your worldview. what to fear, who to fear, how to behave, what to do, how to think. And propaganda was rampant in 1935-45 Germany. There was a Holocaust survivor, I mentioned this in another video, and they asked her, like, how did they get the German people to hate the Jewish people? How did they do that? Well, this consciousness of destruction pumped out the propaganda that said, well, the Jewish people, they're diseased. They've got a disease, and they're going to make you sick, right? Or they'll kill you. And they kept repeating this message over and over and over again. So they were taught to fear and hate a group of people. This is the shadow of conflict, the 6. So this propaganda of division and conflict is rampant right now. Remember, they didn't have the technology that we have now, right? So this division with race, right, with religions, with sex, with the sexes, with the right and left politically, with sexual orientation, gender identification. And now they're starting the division between the people who got the jab and the ones who didn't get the jab, right? That division is starting. I've already seen it. You must see it out in the world too if you follow the news, right? So anything that divides us in this way is the consciousness of destruction, fear, and hate. So you want to stay away from this. Stay away from this worldview. It's very limited and it's all based in fear. So you want to stay away from this kind of thinking of us and them. So we really have to be diligent with our thoughts and our emotions and our actions and stay in this consciousness of unity. Not conformity, unity, and to stand up for truth in our own lives, whatever that looks like. It's not about you should do this and you should do that. You'll know when you're self-referenced, not outer reference, self-referenced, right? Where your decisions are coming from inside you. And just as a side note, right, these awareness readings, the recorded awareness readings that I do, the 1.5 hour reading, shows you your unique way of being self-referenced. So Neptune is in the 36 right now, which is the shadow of turbulence. So turbulence, right, emotional turbulence is coming off the solar plexus. And this is the dark night of the soul. So you can see that the 36 entered on May 10th, and it'll be there until August 12th. Then it goes back into the 22, and then it's going to come back into the 36, and it's going to stay there for 2 years, a little over 2 years, from 2022 to 2024. Then we go into the 25th gate, right, and then back to the 36, right, for these last couple months to finish that up. So this is the dark night of the soul, the 36, the darkening of the light. It's the gate of crisis, the gate of crisis. So the dark night of the soul is an intense emotional release, right? It's feeling disconnected or alienated from the divine. And if you're a teacher or practitioner of Kundalini Yoga, this is Shaktipad. Right? So this is a spiritual test. And this is when we're plunged into inner darkness, this feeling of being totally lost, alone, empty, right? Life has no meaning or hope. And so really it's the veil of illusion is being lifted in the dark night of the soul. And this is when we stop numbing or controlling the shadow, our shadow aspect. It comes full on through the dark night of the soul. So at this time, we can see only darkness, right? We can't really see light, which means we don't see hope. We don't feel hope or optimism, right? Life can seem totally pointless and full of pain because that's all you see is the shadow. There's no ability to feel happiness or beauty or joy. And this love and light is covered up with cynicism and despair, right? So the light of the soul can dim so much that life can feel really just completely empty, right? So the dark night of the soul is really an initiation, and it's about a death and rebirth, and it's an experience that tears away what's false, what's not true. So these can be belief patterns that you've had, right, that you've inherited from your ancestors. They're not true for you. There could be false concepts, right? Shattering. There's a shattering of this small world, this limited point of view that you've held on for so long. You could even have the way that you perceive yourself. Your own self-perception may be very limited. That will fall away. So this is the ego death, right? This is the old self-identity dissolving, and this is trial by fire. It's a deep purification. So it's really an invitation. The dark night of the soul is an invitation to walk your spiritual path and to be your authentic self in this lifetime. You know, and I've been through a few now, dark nights of the soul, and they bring you to your knees, which means they humble the ego. They bring you to a state of humility. Not humiliation, but a state of humility. That's a high frequency spiritual state, is humility, right? And so it turns your world upside down. So you know it's the dark night of the soul when it's just not one thing that goes. It's like there's a couple, right? The tag team, like at least two things, two major things that go at the same time. And what it's doing is destroying everything that's limiting you. So you're left in the darkness to find your own inner light. You can't look for the light outside of you. It's got to come from inside you. Right? So the dark night of the soul is really a spiritual metamorphosis. So it's the real, and it's also the realization, because it's the illusion dropping away, of the insanity of this world, the insanity of humanity. And so there's a deep desire to be lifted above the intense suffering of the world. It's connecting to the suffering of all of humanity. That's what you tap into. So this suffering serves a greater purpose. This isn't about being a masochist, right? It's not being about a martyr. We're transcending that. And so there's a difference between the needless suffering, you know, the needless suffering that's created by the ego. This is the chasing power and chasing money and status and chasing human love. And it's never enough. It's insatiable. That creates suffering. That's needless suffering. That's ego suffering. This suffering isn't transformational. It keeps you locked. It keeps you limited and stuck in a small box. I'm talking about sacred suffering. Different. Sacred suffering, big S suffering, suffering that brings grief, right? That brings grief out of the solar plexus. And the emotion of grief is the key into vibrational awareness. Okay, so remember, we're moving from a mental awareness system, which is experiencing life through the mind, to the solar plexus awareness system, which is spirit awareness. I talk about all this 6 hours, right, in my 2027 webinar. So this is about feeling our way through life, not thinking our way through life. So the emotion of grief is the very last emotion that's left before the opening of spirit awareness. So grief is the emotional reaction to loss. And I'm sure that you've all experienced some kind of loss in your life, especially since 2012. So it could be, you know, loss of relationships, a loss of job, a place of living, loss of an old way of being. Maybe your spiritual path was lost, right? An old identity is going away. And the spiritual purpose of all this is to initiate you into the dark night of the soul. Right? So you're like that little caterpillar, and you're finally stopping, and you're letting the metamorphosis happen, right? You're in the cocoon. So you want to welcome this loss. I know that sounds crazy, but you want to welcome it. And once you go through a dark night of the soul or two, you're going to recognize, oh, there's something good that's going to really come out of this, right? So you want to welcome this loss, this dark night of the soul. Because life is removing all those limitations created by your ego structure, right? And that's false. It's not real. And everything not aligned with your vibrational frequency is being taken away. And so, of course, we're seeing many, many people on the planet clinging to the old because of this fear of meeting the self, the higher self, right? And this facing uncertainty, the unknown, what lies ahead for humanity, right? This is vibrational awareness. So I also want to say I have a new 6-week live program coming up for summer solstice in June, and it's on grief and loss, right? So it's the spiritual alchemy of divine love. So divine love is the experience of vibrational awareness. And so it's going to be a series of live classes, and there's going to be breakout rooms so you can connect with one another. There'll be meditations, weekly meditations, Q&A. There'll be time for Q&A, writing exercises. So it's really for anyone who's not been able to let go of the past, right, who has suffered a loss in their life that they haven't worked through. So it could be a divorce, separation, death, losing friends and family, health, money, spiritual direction, right? Some deep loss that's really shaken you to your core. And the intention is to use these experiences as a way to reach vibrational awarenesses. So we're going to be using that fuel of grief to move into vibrational awareness, opening the door, right? So the grief and loss program will be moving through each of the 6 primal wounds of humanity. And so you'll be working with your unique shadow pattern that's connected to your primal wound according to your chart. The primal wound is the karmic wound that you've inherited from your ancestors. So of course it's going to be deep and profound. And if you feel like your soul saying, yes, this is exactly what I need right now, then please sign up. I'll be putting up more information on my website in the next couple days. Okay? And if you're in the dark night of the soul right now, there's a free meditation on my website to practice for 40 days. So Kundalini Yoga meditation. And more importantly is this too shall pass, right? Knowing that this too shall pass. This experience will pass, right? If you're willing to go through the fire of purification. And you also have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to change and drop what's no longer serving you, right? You have to have that willingness to put that all in God's hands. So let's move the Neptunian energy out of the lower frequency, which is deception and lies and manipulation and propaganda. And I don't know what the truth is here. And let's move it into the higher octave, the higher frequency of Neptune, which is spirituality. It's oneness, it's wholeness. So these next 6 years are crucial to our growth and evolution as a humanity. And it's exciting times if we commit to our spiritual path, right? That's true for us. It's not going to be the same for your friend or the neighbor down the street. It's got to be unique to you, your spiritual path. So the gifts here with the 36, with Neptune in the 36, right, of turbulence, emotions and nervousness and all that crazy stuff. The gifts are humanity and compassion, and that's our true nature. And our humanity is under attack right now, and it's our feeling nature that makes us human. It's our feelings. This is how we connect to others, through our feeling nature and how we connect to God. So you want to protect your humanity. You want to protect your compassion for others and for yourself. So I'm going to be talking much, much more in depth about the dark night of the soul and the grief and loss program. Okay? But I just wanted to share some information and what I see. And I'll be talking about this more in depth in other videos coming up. So you can follow me on Instagram, Telegram, my Facebook group, and then Bitchute. And if you go to Bitchute, please like and subscribe. So this is where I'm going to put up my free meditations, right, on Bitchute. I can't put them up here on YouTube, but I can put them up on Bitchute. So make sure you subscribe so you have access to them. And the free magnetic field Kriya, 34 minutes, is already up there on Bitchute. And I talked about this in the last video about the magnetic field of the Earth being disrupted. So be sure to watch that video and then go practice the Kriya. Okay? So take good care, and I'll see you soon in my next video. Okay. Sat Nam Aloha.